we were chatting earlier, and I was saying to you that one of the things that sort of appealed to me was around the soul contracts. What exactly is soul contracts? I've heard of this term before, but what is it, and how do we unpack it and make sense of what it is all about?
Well, I think, Paula, in its simplest form, it really suggests to us that every single person that we meet or that we encounter is predetermined in terms of what is that person going to contribute to your growth, to your expansion. And so the soul contract is predestined before you were born. I often just use the example of, of a control room. And before you are born, you move into this space and you choose a movie. And the movie that you choose is in accordance with what are you coming here to learn? What is your desires? What are your dreams? What would you like this experience to be? And that can be based on the experiences you've had before. And so in a movie, we have got a mother, a father, brothers, sisters, siblings, children's relationships and partners. And then I always use the example of the boardroom next door. And so all of these souls go to the boardroom next door and you contract. And, you know, you say, well, I am going to teach you this and this and this, and I'm going to show you how forgiveness really works. And so we contract. And then we are born, and obviously then our memories are raised. And then through our journey, we forget. But I think just being in awareness of it is where the soul contract really come into play. And yeah, so that's really in its simplest form what it is.
That's actually very fascinating, because I suppose it depends on sort of what your spiritual belief systems are, or universal belief systems, and that in terms of, you always hear that cliche, you know, about relationships, and that it's you know, for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. And I guess that kind of links to that in terms of whether, you know, how we're contracting, and whether we come back again to keep learning the lesson, so to speak, or we keep attracting the same kind of person. Is that the same kind of thing?
Yes, well, I think in terms of that, you know, if we do not come from a spiritual perspective, one question that we can ask is, well, why do we have the same issues that keep on cropping up? What is the significance of that? I mean, even in your work and for, you know, where you work, why do we have the same issues that keep cropping up?
Yeah, and you know, one of the questions that I always get asked is, are we meant to be with the same person forever? You know, when you get married, or decide you're going to commit to someone, are we only meant to be with one person for the rest of our lifetime? Or that, you know, the happily ever after that we often hear people talking about from a relationship point of view. And yeah, I do believe that you can love more than one person, and we can love in different ways. But I guess there will always be that one love, that person that you will always remember, that kind of, whether they broke your heart, or whether it's a person that you let get away, or, you know, we've all got a story of someone in our life from a love story perspective that impacted us. But yeah, I suppose for me, it's, you know, when I work with couples and couples come to see me, and one of the first questions that always ask me is, you know, can you save our relationship? Can we get back to where we used to be, kind of thing? And yeah, you can, absolutely. But at the same time, I do believe that some relationships can't be saved, and that's particularly where there is an abusive environment. Abuse of any form is unacceptable. And in those situations, I would say, no, the relationship is not worth saving or fighting for. It's too destructive.
I think interesting to that, because we also do know that we have free will, you know, so for me, the key is the minute that we start judging one another, the minute that we start to try and look at the other person more than myself, that will pretty much determine where my own spiritual growth is. I mean, if we've got two circles coming together, two beautiful whole people that has learned to forgive, that's moved closer to the realm of unconditional love, it can be still the same people that's journeyed together. On the other hand, it can just be someone that says, okay, I was my contractual relationship to bring you to this point, but now I'm signing out, you know. So for me, that is predetermined, but we must also remember that we do have free will, and our free will has got a lot to do with how in awareness are we. Again, are we quick to judge, or can we expand to that point of divine understanding, you know, before we kind of like, you've got to change there and there and there. We kind of like, oh, well, what am I receiving from this? And if I can bring in the virtues of forgiveness or love or understanding, it's great. And sometimes that's going to happen with the same person. Sometimes it's going to happen with more than one. That's how we would see that.
So let's talk about these patterns, these same issues that keep on cropping up time and time again, because I get that in the work that I do with couples as well when they come to see me. They keep saying, you know, we keep fighting about the same issue. And, you know, every time we have an argument, it's the whole kitchen sink that comes out from underneath the carpet. And, you know, it was like, this thing happened 5 years ago. Like, why can't you let it go, kind of thing. And so from a spiritual perspective, help us understand what that is. What's that all about?
Well, from there, a pattern is a clear indication that here is a story you're replaying. Let us use the example of the CDs, you know. Remember in the old days when we had CD players in our car and it was in the back of the boot and you put in 5 or 10 and it kept on playing the same songs. And after a while, you don't even realize, but you're stuck there. And so when you become aware of it, when you get that feeling of, wait a minute, I'm just, you know, it's the same thing over and over again. Something's got to give. And at that point, the recognition of it, if you can at that point move to say, I want to break these patterns. I don't want to break them to hurt or harm, but I want to break them so that I can become better for it. We definitely do have the right to say enough of this. You know, I mean, in many readings, I have people saying, you know, why is the same thing always happening? Why am I always cheated on? Or, you know, why can't I just move beyond this point? And from a spiritual perspective, that's kind of like that little alarm going off and say, evacuate, do a fire drill. But if you stay here, then you're gonna be caught in the burning house. And it's just an opportunity for you to evacuate the building and move to a whole new different building. So yeah, so in your work specifically, I mean, if the same issues keep cropping up, would you also take it from the perspective of that self-growth in terms of couples?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we often talk about that cliche about opposites attract and birds of a feather flock together. And so, you know, in terms, especially with the world of imago relationship therapy, which is one of the modalities that I use, a lot of it stems from childhood, where we take on board both the positive and the negative traits of our primary caregivers. So in most instances, mother and father. And positive and negative is neither good or bad. It's simply opposites. So like you get light and day, night and dark, you get the same on an emotional level. You get happy, sad, laughing, crying, etc. And because our primary caregivers is the first experience or physical experience of a relationship that we have, that's where we learn how to be in a relationship from our primary caregivers. And in fact, the first 7 years of a child's life is most crucial in terms of establishing an emotional foundation in the physical world. So in the first 7 years is where we learn how to express ourselves, emotions, manage conflict, trust, affection, vulnerability, deal with conflict, all of those things we learn from our primary caregivers, and that shapes our perspective of what we think a normal relationship looks like. So well, a lot of your upbringing.
Yes. Well, that's interesting if you now refer it to soulmates and soul contracts, because
absolutely.
Yeah, your mother, father, sister, sibling, brother, they've contracted to bring to you a set of beliefs, to bring to you a way of doing, a way of being that later you can either move with or challenge, depending then on linking to your spiritual growth.
Absolutely. And this is where we say from an imago point of view that you attract the person that you actually need to be with to get the healing. Yes. Because of the childhood wounding that has happened in childhood. So very simplistic form or example is, why does it, and I'm generalizing when I say women, but the majority of it is women, why do women end up in abusive relationships or toxic relationships? And it's because that's all they've grown up with. That is their benchmark or their frame of reference as to what a relationship looks like and feels like. And so we then look for that because it is familiar to us. We identify with it on that emotional level until something or someone I guess of that contract where we decide no more. I don't want to be in this environment anymore. I don't want to live like this. I don't want this. This isn't the life I envisaged for myself. And then we
seem to be breaking up a little bit there, Paula. Okay, I'm sure she'll come back now. So just linking onto that, I think where Paula sort of moved into, when we recognize these patterns at any point in time, you can say, enough now, or I want to move beyond it, or I recognize my need for freedom, I recognize my need for self-worth, or I recognize that these beliefs are no longer serving me. And it's at that point where we then move into doing something about it. And for me, the growth and the expansion comes when we make the decision to do something about it. Especially, with that saying that, on the earthly plane, it seems that you can't choose your family. But before you're born, you did choose them to specifically help you and support you to make the shifts that you need to make to move into a place of understanding and more self-love. I think that's ultimately what the journey is. So I'm going to just WhatsApp Paula and see. I'm sure she will be back now. And in the meantime, with what we've discussed already, if you do have questions that you would like to put in the chat box, and I think Paula is back.
Hello, I'm
Hi.
back.
Okay. So Paula, I really just followed on from where you were and just, chatted about, what we dealt with that brings the set of beliefs, and at what point do we then decide to make the change or decide I'm done with this pattern?
I'm back. Sorry, we had a bit of a network issue. There's a storm happening here, and I guess it's just interfered with our airwaves, so to speak.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, so did you get the last bit?
Yeah, as I was saying before I was rudely cut off, it's always when some sort of life-defining moment happens that we choose to change our behavior and either, put down boundaries, because we teach people how to treat us by what we allow and disallow. And or we exit the relationship and we exit the environment.
Yes, yes.
Well, just if anybody's got any questions they want to ask us now, please ask us. We're happy to answer them. So Michelle, you were, sorry, while you were holding the fort while I was trying to connect, what is your, so when it comes to, I suppose, ending the contract, as you said, it's got to do with free will. Why, or what causes someone to end a contract?
Well, I think when you reach that point of awareness that you're feeling that this relationship or this union is causing me harm, it's causing me to move into a place that I don't feel comfortable with, that I don't like who I am anymore, that I don't like what I am receiving, and you kind of like have this need for worthiness and for respect, or you just reach that point when you come to an awareness. And for me, that is the point where we move so quickly into judgment. But the point of that is if we can just look at that point of awareness and say, if this point where I am now is not wrong, it's not to be judged. I'm not wrong, you are not wrong, but let's look at it from a place of understanding. If I am to learn from you right now, what will my learnings be? So you kind of like, because then you are ready to either break the pattern or to move to a point of higher understanding. And for me, there are three things at this point to do: is to really receive the learning. It's then to move into that cycle of forgiveness or cord cutting, and then to determine what is the new spiritual law going forward. How am I going to be treated differently? How am I going to receive differently? How am I going to give differently? And that's how you evolve, because ultimately it's about seeing ourselves in a different light, isn't it? It's about feeling fulfilled, loving yourself, and that's then how you can then unconditionally love another. And so whether one partner is going to show you this journey or a few patterns is going to show you this journey, that's ultimately the worthy fulfillment that you are seeking. And I don't know, also with you, Paula, in terms of this pattern, how can we then move on from a pattern or from this point of awareness? We've now realized that. So what would your advice be to single or to a couple that say, how do we move on from here then?
So, when I'm working with particularly singles, and generally I work with them from two different contexts. One is a single person that feels that they just can't find that special person, or that they just can't sustain a relationship. It's either 3 months or 6 months, and then it kind of ends and they move on to the next one. Or on the other hand, it's someone that's come through the end of a relationship, a breakup or a divorce, and they're wanting to start over again. And in both instances, it's really around, as you said, coming back to the self in terms of being very clear on who am I, in terms of knowing who I am, understanding who I am, flaws and all, because there's no such thing as the perfect person or perfect relationship. It's how perfect can we be for each other. And then at the same time, knowing what am I looking for when it comes to a life partner. What is the kind of person that I want to spend the rest of my life with? And often we kind of look at the higher superficial stuff, so tall, dark, handsome, gym body, those kind of things, but we don't go to the deeper levels. And those are the things that come out and kind of come out to play, as I like to say, in down the line in the relationship. So you need to really go on a deeper level and have a very clear picture on what it is that you're looking for in terms of a life partner. Things like value systems, belief systems, spirituality or faith or religion, whatever you want to call it, sports, hobbies and interests, career aspirations, family aspirations, family, friendships, lifestyle. So for example, if you're expecting your partner to take care of themselves and have the gym body and all of those kind of things, but you're a couch potato, well, that's going to cause conflict, right? And it's going to come out and it's going to be a constant one of these repeating pattern issues that keeps coming up, because it's going to irritate us and frustrate us about each other. So it really is doing the work and being very clear on what is it that I'm looking for, and then how do I go out and be that in order to attract that into my life, if that's what I say I want.
You know what's amazing about that is for me, I believe that the patterns contribute to that know-how. And so whether the pattern is with the same person or the pattern is with multiple soulmates, and we'll go to maybe soulmates and twin flames in a while, but it's these patterns. If we don't resist them, if we don't judge them, if we don't judge the other person and we say, right, everybody's doing the best they can with what they have, let me move. I always say understanding is the opposite of judgment. And so if I move into an understanding of, if I look at you as a soul, not as a human being, what am I here to receive? And every time you do that, your self-worth goes up and up and up. Your self-respect starts filling up and up and up, to the point that you say, I'm very clear that this is the vibration that I'm giving out, is then the vibration that I'm going to attract. So it's a lot of internal self reflection. Like I always say to the people on the retreat, stay in your lane. It's all about you, and it's stay in your lane and work from there. And the more these experiences, don't resist them, don't judge them, don't play victim to them, but use them to fill up your beingness. And then they can contribute so much to all of your relationships, whether it's family or a partner, because you definitely will meet you definitely will meet those soulmates that signed up to come and assist you with certain lessons and learnings. And that's, and you call them every time you say, how can I fix this? That's when you call the soulmate. That's like when that soul alarm goes off and the soul says, I'm on my way. And then there's dynamics that play. And then soulmates are not really only partners, as we know. It's really family members, siblings, brothers, sisters, cousins, anybody that you meet that contributes to your life, really.
I see we've had some comments and saying, yes, I keep picking the same kind of person. So, yeah, and I see one or two people also, just saying, that's me, that sounds like me. So it seems like a lot of people are resonating with what we're saying at the moment. Yes. I wanted to talk to you about, we were talking about forgiveness earlier, and I find that this is a big issue when it's working with couples, particularly where, because generally what I find with the work that I do is that couples, majority of the time, they come to seek help when it's almost too late. In other words, there's a lot of damage that's been done. There's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of resentment, there's a lot of pain, which makes it harder to change the patterns and the behaviors to get their relationship, in that good space, that where we complement each other instead of contradict each other or are in conflict with each other. And forgiveness is a big thing that a lot of couples struggle with, even more so when there's been things like infidelity and cheating and stuff like that. And obviously then we're talking about trust issues as well, which is it's difficult for some people to come back from that. I know for me, in my personal journey, which is actually how I got into this work, but I was in a 6.5-year relationship way back in 2006. And at the time, my partner had an affair, and we were going for therapy. We tried to sort things out, but I just couldn't get my head around the trust factor. For me, I realized after that incident, and it wasn't the first time that I'd been cheated on, so clearly I was attracting it. But I realized then that for me, that was a deal breaker. And that's important when working with singles and couples, and that in terms of what are your deal breakers. If you don't know what your deal breakers are and your non-negotiables, those things are going to happen to you.
Absolutely.
So tell us about forgiveness in terms of a spiritual level.
Well, forgiveness for me is the one act that clears the karma around a pattern. So every time that we forgive, if we can just detach a little bit from the who's right or wrong, or how was I, the fear aspect, the fear of rejection, the fear of hurt, the fear of failure, the fear of mistake, because that's what really causes us to put the forgiveness in the third dimensional space. And so if we come through a pattern or something as deep as infidelity or abuse, if we come from something as deep as that, we have to bring into awareness that if this was a soul contract, that's always your first point. What am I receiving? Whether it's a lesson for boundaries or respect or knowing what you want, or knowing whatever the learning is personal to you. It can be anything. They're not universal. It's and you then move into forgiveness. You sort of see forgiveness differently. It's not saying what you did is excused, or what you did was right or wrong. It's saying I felt like half a circle in this incident, and forgiveness is what's going to make me whole. And so if I strive to be whole in every encounter, in every relationship, filling up that love bank, clearing, the more I use forgiveness, the more I clear karmic patterns. And so then my circle of love is strong. So what will happen is I will start attracting other circles. And now I've got two whole circles next to each other that is not concerned about who's right or wrong, or how are you serving me or not serving me. My only purpose to contribute to your life is to help you to grow as I'm helping myself to grow. Then you get that infinity symbol. You see, then it's a nice flow of love. But without forgiveness, we either have this, that we're so intertwined and we have these expectations from each other, and it's so tangled and neither is loose from one another. Or you have a half a circle and a half a circle, because there's so much hurt and healing and unforgiveness. And now we're trying to bring different halves together. But forgiveness must happen here on an individual level. So it doesn't really have anything to do with the other person. It's got to do with your journey to love.
I'm glad that we're on the same page there, because we use similar language actually. So when I'm working with couples and that, it's important, and people always ask me, what does a healthy relationship look like? Yes. And it's about being able to retain your sense of individuality, so wholeness, but then coming together and co-creating the us, the we, and the ours. And this is where the relationship lives. It's that space between the two people. Yes. And often you'll hear marriage counselors or therapists or whatever, or people using the word compromise. And I don't like using that word because it has a negative connotation attached to it. It's almost
so
like I've got to.
So with you.
It's like I've got to give up, or I've got to give up or give in to get something. Yeah. So I like to use the word contribution. What contribution am I making by how I'm showing up and how I'm co-creating our relational space? And the relational space is simply how, like right now, you and I are relating to each other through the screen. I mean, that's all a relationship is, really. It's how we react and respond to each other by how we are showing up. And the language that we use, which is the I and the me versus the us, the we, and the ours. And forgiveness is a big part of that. And also, you mentioned one thing which also plays up hugely when working with couples, and that's unmet expectations. Yes. That's probably the biggest downfall in couples that I see, is that we create these expectations in our mind of how our partner should be or say or do or behave, and then when they don't meet that expectation, we feel let down and disappointed. But in actual fact, we set our partner up for failure in the first place because we had this expectation, we created it, and we didn't share it with them, and so how were they supposed to meet it in the first place?
Absolutely. I so love that you say that, because I always teach about the difference between expectation and intention. And if we have an expectation, like you said, there's a picture, and 100% of the time the pictures aren't talked about or shared, like trust. I have an expectation of trust, and trust to me looks like commitment, loyalty, no men's nights. And to someone else, trust is you can do whatever you want, just talk to me. And then we think that trust is this hovering planet in the middle, and everybody just needs to understand what the meaning of trust is. But no one says, let's talk about your picture of trust or my picture of trust. So for me, rather work with intention. So if I don't have any expectations and I show up with an intention to be the best version of me, with an intention to serve you with the best version of me so that you can become the best version of you. There's no expectation, there's pure intention. And this is possible through, I don't want to talk too long, but this compromise thing is so important, because when you stop compromising, you've reached a point of enlightenment, which means that you feel in self-love, you feel worthy, you are in self-respect, you are in your absolute light, and you don't have to compromise on that. So therefore, you will start meeting people that share that, and then no compromise is necessary, apart from, I love the word contribution, apart from just being the best version of you, because that's ultimately why you signed up to meet that person. Cool. So I love what you've used there, and I think, drop the expectation and live with intention.
Yeah, very much so. It makes a world of difference in our relationships, particularly the health and the quality of our relationships, whether that's personal or professional relationships, because you can actually apply this to any relationship, really. But it does play out more in our personal relationships because they're more emotionally charged than what our professional relationships are. I see we've got a question. So this is for you. What's the difference between a twin flame and a soulmate? And before you answer that, I just want to say to anybody else, if they do have questions, please post them, or please post comments in the chat group. We are going to open up the time just now at the end for a discussion anyway, but feel free to post your questions for us.
Well, I think soulmates are really there to contribute to our soul's growth. So they will show up, like you explained earlier, reason, season, lifetime. And when your journey or when your interaction with the soulmate takes place, you will know that that person is there to show you something. Very often when relationships end, or when there's that point of, okay, are we going to stay together, or are we, this is our last chance. This is more your soulmate interactions. What am I receiving from you? What if you are my mirror? That type of thing. Those are soulmates. And soulmates are different because we can have different purposes as soulmates. We can be so far apart in our intentions and viewpoints and likes and values, but we meet for a reason, and then we clearly know what I have learned from that person. Whereas a twin flame is the exact same energy as you, the exact like a twin. And you know what happens if two people that's exactly the same come together, it's explosive. I mean, initially it's explosive from a passionate point of view, and we can't believe that everything's the same. And then later on, because twin flames have got exactly the same purpose, we're exactly the same energy. And we don't meet our twin flame necessarily in every lifetime. Sometimes our twin can be out there doing the same purpose as we are elsewhere. And sometimes we will come together to contribute to the greater good. Sometimes, often people refer to as power couples, power couples. I say, wow, that's it. So that's very often a twin flame, because we've just got this massive explosive purpose and personalities, and we're serving the greater good. So those are kind of like the twin flames trigger us the most. But if we recognize and we work with it rather than judging it, and not, taking things so personally, you can receive a beautiful fulfillment of purpose together with a twin flame. But on that note, it's not so important to know who is who and is this a soulmate, is this a twin flame. For me, it's rather about, what are you contributing in my journey right now? Is it serving me? Is it not serving me? What can I receive from this? And is this union contributing to unconditional love, self-worth, self-respect, contribution? And for me, that's the key question. If you don't judge that and you move with it, and you work with the principles of understanding and forgiveness and faith and trust and all those good things, you can then take it further, because you will meet everybody that you are destined to meet in one lifetime.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I see that also with, working with couples in relationships where I call it speed bumps, where they've hit a speed bump and they've become disconnected, so they're not on the same page with each other. And that's when that relational space becomes negative and toxic. And we sometimes get stuck in I call it the blame game, where we blame our partners and we point fingers, because it's, and some of the work that I teach is, particularly when it comes to getting stuck in the blame game, is that the word blame, the last two letters ends in me, M-E. And when we blaming everything else and everyone else, we're actually avoiding taking accountability and responsibility for me and my contribution to the relationship and the relational space and to my partner. And how am I showing up for my partner? And also you spoke about the love bank, and I always also share when I work with couples around relationships as a bank account, as an investment account. And every day the way you show up, and it's those little things that you do, those little daily interactions that builds intimacy. And intimacy is very different to sex, because often they're confused as one and the same thing. But intimacy is those feeling things around how I feel about my partner, my relationship. I feel cared for, valued, appreciated, respected. It's the, making me a cup of coffee, or, helping me, supporting me, all those kind of things. And a lot of couples, when they come to me and they're talking about intimacy, I know that they're actually talking about sex. They're not talking about intimacy.
Yes.
So we have a whole discussion around the difference, and that if you just focus on building the intimacy in your relationship, the sex will follow.
Absolutely. I love that. I wanted to also ask you, you alluded to the me and the, because ultimately it is about self-love, isn't it? It is about, you know, to the extent that you regard yourself as worthy and you love yourself, that will ultimately determine how you give, or how you feel about giving and receiving. So for me, the love bank, I've really related it to self-love. So if my, you know, because love is a currency. People always seem to have a huge difference between love and money, and the one is okay and the other one is not, but they're the same currency. If you don't have money in your bank account, you feel scared and insecure and unsafe. And if you don't have love in your love bank, in your self-love, you feel the same. So the love bank is just something that I created to help you towards self-love, like income. So I've created this love balance sheet. So income is what you give to you. What do you put in your love bank? Those little things you do for yourself. And then expenses will be what you alluded to. What do you do for the other person? How do you expend your love into another person's love bank? And then you get cash flow, which is acts of kindness and volunteering, and, you know, the cash flow, the thing that makes the love and abundance keep going, you know. And then we have that feeling of overdraft. And I think for me, I don't know if you've experienced it, but that's where a lot of things start going wrong. Like you have clients that say, I've given to the point that I'm actually exhausted, and that's overdraft. It means exactly like an overdraft. You've given too much than what you are earning, than what you are allowing yourself to receive. And then we've got the good old return on investment, which is, what are the things that are you taking yourself on a holiday? Are you going on a retreat? Are you doing self-development courses? Because those will return what you put in, and those contribute ultimately to that me part that you spoke about. So how often does the concept of self-love comes up for you when working with couples?
You know, it comes up, but it comes up more in different ways. People often, or couples, they're looking to their partner to make them whole and to make them happy, and they place a lot of responsibility on their partner for their own happiness. Or they look to their partner or outwards. So in workplace is often a common one as well, sometimes sports and hobbies, for external validation, because they don't have the internal validation. They have the low self-esteem, low self-worth, low self-belief, all those kind of things, low self-confidence. And as you said, alluded to earlier, if you're not whole first, it's very difficult to give to others, so your partner, and that whole investment account. So as I use it as an investment account, and every time you do loving contributions to your relationship, and the intentions, how you're showing up, you're making deposits into your bank account, your relationship. And every time toxic behaviors come out, so when you get stuck in the blame game or that negative spiral, you're actually withdrawing from your relationship bank. So we actually use, it's interesting that we use similar concepts and terminology.
And
but the four pillars.
Sorry, but you also, you know, you have to deposit into your own account, because you know, you cannot have an investment account if you haven't made any deposits into that. So you can't give what you don't have. So what will you take from? And I think that is, you know, the self-love. If I stop focusing on that, I can have less and less external validation. So for me, that's the foundation, is rather go on a journey of self-love and stay single until you love yourself enough. And then your partnership.
That's what I do when people come to me and they've been through a breakup or a divorce. I'm like, that's it, no dating, and for like at least 3 months minimum, depending on how long they've been in their relationship. Because there's like, it's not a fast and hard rule, but the sort of the, I suppose, the perception or the out there is that for every month that you've been in a relationship, take 1 week, and for every year that you've been in a relationship, take 1 month as your time out, your me time, to reconnect with yourself and learn to know yourself all over again and love yourself all over again, and that, you know, that kind of thing. But I make it very important when I'm working with couples that it's equally important to have me time, so the self-love time and doing the things that grow me and fulfill me and energize me and ground me and all those things. It's equally important for that as it is for spending time, quality time together as a couple and growing as a couple.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. You know, for me, what I found, and in my own life and also in some of the journeys I've walked with people, almost 90% of the relationship patterns or learnings is about self-love, self-respect, boundaries, you know, that overdraft story. And I think if you get to the point, I think it links up with what you said about, now I'm clear about what my values are. And what my deal breakers are, because I'm at a point where I truly, truly love myself, and I'm not going to compromise on who I am to serve, because otherwise it's not going to work. And then I'm going to, you know, look for these things from you. And because you're busy with your own journey and your own learnings and your own soul contracts, you ain't going to be in awareness of this. So, you know, everybody, apart from the fact that we come together, as I chose my movie with all the players in it, so everybody I come together has chosen their movies. So they're busy living their contracts and I'm busy living mine. So we have to give each other space to live those and receive from them. I cannot walk your journey for you. I cannot do your lessons for you.
Yeah, and that's where it's about, even though I do, when I'm working with couples, at the same time, make it very clear that they're doing self-work as well, because you cannot change your partner. You can only change yourself in terms of behavior and intentionality and expectations and stuff. And so even though you might be coming here for couples counseling or couples therapy or couples coaching, you're also doing individual work as well at the same time, because it always comes back to self.
Yes.
I see we've got about 8 minutes left, so I want to open the floor to anybody that has some comments or would like to ask us some questions on what we've spoken about, or just any comments in general that you may have come to mind since we've been discussing the various topics that we have.
I think people are going through the soul contracts. Going, what was that one? What was that one?
Anybody, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask us a question, or you're welcome to just type it in the chat box. Is there perhaps something that we haven't covered that you would still like us to talk about? So Michelle, while we were just waiting for people to post, the question is that I've sort of wondered about, I guess, is, you know, in terms of, and I suppose, I guess it depends on whether you believe in reincarnation or second lifetimes and those kind of things. But if you end a relationship and your journey hasn't finished, do you meet up with that person in the next lifetime or in another form or shape in terms of reincarnation, another soul, so to speak?
Yes, I truly believe that if you haven't resolved your issues in this lifetime, it will continue until the two souls have said, right, we fulfilled our contractual obligations. And the beauty of it, and for me, that is where forgiveness comes in. You know, some mornings I will just wake up and I'll just go, I forgive everyone for everything. Just in case there's something I've missed, because, you know, you want to be clear in this lifetime. You want to be clear that, you know, okay, I have received, I have learned. I'm filling up my love bank. I'm out of that place where I judge myself or have the fear of rejection or the fear of whatever. I'm just in a place where I want to be in harmony with who I am. And I often then will ask, is there anybody that I haven't forgiven? And then, you know, 2 or 3 days later, a name will pop up. So once you've done that, you know, once you've received the learning, you've done the forgiveness, and you apply the lesson or the learning going forward, then that cycle is done. That learning is done. So then the soulmates attributed to that life lesson will then not return because the contractual obligation is fulfilled. And I think if you don't believe in reincarnation or you don't believe in lifetimes, then just make this journey the best one ever. Just make sure that in this journey, you know, that you clear with everybody, and that you know, in the reset circle last night, we asked the one question, and that was, what if all of my relationships are there to elevate me into a higher consciousness? And if you only have that question with how you work with people, something your soul knows, it will trigger that awareness, and you will know what to do because it's within you already. Yeah, sometimes they'll approach you as a coach, or perhaps maybe a spiritual coach, whatever you know, they're drawn to or aligned to. But ultimately, you know, how many times have you worked with people and they go, oh yeah, I knew it, and you just kind of like facilitating you're just a sounding board. And that's beautiful, because then people start realizing that I know this stuff, I know it.
Yeah, you know, I think it often comes up where people go like, you know, my gut instinct or my intuition, or, you know, depending on the language that they use, or, you know, if I think back and reflect, like all the red flags or the red signs were there, but I chose to ignore them. Absolutely. You know, those kind of things. And then we go through what are some of the lessons that you needed to learn, you know, and what are you taking with you into your next relationship as to what did work and what didn't work. How did you contribute to that? And then what are you going to carry into the next relationship so that you don't repeat the same patterns and the same mistakes?
Absolutely. And I always say to people, when we're in a corporate company and that fire alarm goes off, we're all about fire drills. We're all about fire drills, and we follow it to the T, and the procedures are up. But when the fire alarm in our own house goes off, we don't listen. And we don't do the fire drill. We don't go outside and reflect. You know, is this fire drill working? You know, what needs to change or be updated? And then we only go out when the house is burning down. And then I have that feeling of, I've got nothing left. Everything's burned down. So I think that's shock and grief. And as you know, we work through those. And then I often say to people, and now you have an opportunity to go build a new house. And don't worry about the expenses, because you have insurance. The universe gives you insurance against these things. So you have all the insurance in the world. Go and build your new house. So lay that foundation, build it new, decorate it beautifully with all your intentions and learnings you've received, and then live in the new house.
Yeah, I definitely think intention is critical to every aspect in terms of self, and how am I being intentional towards myself, the self-love, self-care. How am I being intentional towards my relationship and my partner? Because they're equally important. And as I say to all couples, you know, life is too short to be in miserable and unhappy relationships, which should actually be our biggest source of nurturing and love and joy and aliveness. And, you know, if you're not feeling that in your relationship, and that's not to say that relationships don't go through, as I say, speed bumps, you know, we have our down days, that's life. We can't be on a constant high. But if the lows are outweighing the highs, then that's a sign. You need to start paying attention. But if you average it out and you go, you know what, yeah, we have our ups and downs, but, you know, overall, my relationship is actually it's perfect for us, because it's loving and it's fulfilling. And yeah, there's days where we want to strangle each other and, you know, those kind of things, but that's normal. It's part of life. We have ups and downs.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think ultimately, you know, your soul will guide you, you know, whether this is fulfillment or whether you are actually destroying yourself in the process. Your soul will know that.
Michelle, it has been awesome chatting to you. I see we are on the hour. I'm just going to open it one last time for anybody else. If they have any last minute questions or comments that they want to ask us, now's your time. Let us know. We'd also love to know how you felt about the session. Did you find it interesting? Did you find it of value? Would you like to have another session like this? Despite a few of the tech glitches that we had on my side. Maybe that was my soul contract talking to you, Michelle. No last minute questions. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We really have, I've enjoyed sharing this with you and learning more on a spiritual level, Michelle, and I'm looking forward to the next time we catch up.
Well, Paula, thank you. For me, it was just so awesome to see the collaboration and the contribution, and that, you know, all journeys, and even though, you know, there are always different viewpoints, that's so significant of a relationship. There can be, you know, so much learning from each other. So I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. I've definitely taken a few tips as well. From you, so thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a great evening, everybody, and I'm sure we'll be looking to do one of these again soon, and we'll let you all know.
Thank you.